It's finally time. Let's see about doing the head gasket on this. I've done it a few times. It's not a difficult job. I've just been putting it off. This car is tax and MOT exempt. It is insured. So arguably I can replace the gasket, providing nothing's warped. I can be on my way, straight away. We'll see. Fortunately, the workshop manual is nice and clear. I've done this several times, as evidenced by oily fingerprints. Now, if you're wondering why it's in this ring binder, two reasons. My manual, it kind of fell apart, so I very carefully dismantled it and then put it in here, and now it is easy to keep clean. I'm not going to make this a step-by-step guide on how to do this because I'm not very confident with engine work, and I know whatever I do, somebody is going to tell me I'm doing it wrong. So you can just watch along as an amateur does it who doesn't like doing engine work. I'm not going to do this exactly like the book says. There's a good reason for that. Things like the manifold here, it's easier to unbolt the manifold from the head than it is to separate the join where the exhaust joins the manifold. Reason for this is if you split the join under the manifold, it's very, very difficult to seal it up again. It's a bit of a design flaw on these cars. Minis and Maxis have the same issue. It's much easier to make sure your exhaust seals by unbolting the manifold from the back of the head. It's fiddly, but it is easier. The book would have you remove an awful lot of things before you even set this part. I prefer to set this first. So the first thing we do is we take the cam belt cover off. If you have a Princess or Ambassador or other O series engine and you can't find these grommets, they're a very special shape. Get classic mini heater grommets and they're the same thing. They fit straight in, it's great. That just pops off. There should be an O-ring here. Every single time I've fitted one it's gone hard and it's fallen off, so there isn't one, so this does rattle a little bit. This is a 17mm. I know the engine isn't locked up. Where's the dimple? Okay. I'll bring you in for a closer look in a minute to explain. So there's a little dimple at the top and there's a marker on the bottom. So I'll just get everything lined up. I don't think we're far off actually. And then you'll be able to see what's going on. At the top you have a dimple there and a hole here which you want to line up. And the same dimple on the back. This is ever so slightly off, so I'm just going to have to move it a tiny bit. It's just a bit tricky. So I'm just going to get this lined up where it needs to be and see how we do. There, that looks about right. Next thing I'm going to do is get the distributor cap off, pull the leads and the spark plugs and the electronic ignition and a new timing belt as well. A while ago I replaced the points and condenser with a Hall effect electronic ignition thingy because I was having trouble finding decent condensers. This cured that problem. The only real improvement I've seen is it starts better when it's damp. It doesn't seem to have made any difference to fuel economy or anything like that. Right, spark plugs. Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. The one under the distributor is a pain. there isn't enough room to get into it with a conventional socket. Pop off the vacuum hose at the manifold, and then we've got bolts for the manifold, the temperature sender wire, and then the coolant. This is non-standard. The original thermostat housing I had just disintegrated, so this is just what I had to do. I'll probably change this again in the future for something a little bit tidier. It's not the best solution, but it works well enough. Yeah, I do have to remove the manifold. I was thinking I might not have to, but I do, because otherwise I can't clean the faces up properly. Right, manifold bolts are 13s. And there's 7, I think. I do have to take this off because the heat shield's in the way, and the only way to get the heat shield off is to take this off. So there's 4 bolts on there to do, and I can get in at that. I think they're also 13s. Yes. Doesn't really matter how you go in at this, it's always annoying. Access is quite poor. Also, this top one here, you can't actually get that off until you've loosened the other ones, because the body of the dashpot actually fouls the nut, which is superb design. So here you go. These are the 4 studs in the manifold, and they go through the body of the carburetor there. And this one, you can see how small that gap is there, and it's that bit there just gets in the way of the nut coming all the way off that stud. So you have to do that stud first when you put it on, and last when you take it off. The studs for the manifold are hiding inside there, and it's that joint there that you do not want to split unless you absolutely have to. There's 2 pipes, and they're an absolute bear to line up. I haven't had this exhaust blowing there for so long that I am not willing to disturb these clamps. They're also really awkward to get to. It's just easier to take the manifold off. The pipe for the oil breather gets in the way just enough to be a nuisance. Okay, manifold off. As you can see, that's nice and loose. The tricky part when you put the manifold on is getting the bolts through the gasket that goes in here. You can do it, you just have to be patient, and you do get there with it. Right, before I pop the head off, I need to drain the coolant out. So I'm going to quickly do that. Now we'll take the head off and see what the damage is. That's the coolant drained, nice and clean. Then it wasn't mixing oil and water, so that's not a surprise. I've taken both of these caps off just to allow it to drain better, so it's not locking anywhere. This is just an overflow bottle, expansion bottle, and this is my fill point. Now time to take the head bolts out. Not these ones, these are for the cam cover. Now the Princess engine, the O series, is a bit unusual in that the cam rides in here, but this cast head piece, the rocker cover, as it would be on a overhead valve engine, actually has cast-in bearings for the camshaft. So you have to make sure that this piece and the bigger piece of the head underneath are matched. You can't just swap the cover on the top, because then your bearing halves don't match and you get uneven wear and all that sort of business. So that's why we're not disturbing any of these. I'm not interested in taking this apart. I just want to take the head off, because I think the only problem in here is the head gasket itself. The car never overheated. If you saw the last Princess video, you'll know what I mean. It hasn't driven very far. It hasn't really given me any problems beyond losing compression on this cylinder, and when it gets up to temperature you can see bubbles coming out on the seam, and you can see bubbles in this bottle. So I'm pretty sure it's just a bad gasket. But this will be the moment of truth. Oh, and yes, I did make sure that everything was torqued on the heads. Oh, God. I went around them several times and they all showed good. Wow, that one's tight. Might need my breaker bar. That's a horrible noise. Well, that's interesting. As I've let the pressure off that, the coolant started draining again. Not sure why that would be, it doesn't normally do that. Oh well. If you're wondering why these ones have studs sticking out the top, that's so you can put mounting brackets on and bolt them down. And that's why the other ones don't have them. There's no other way of lifting the engine out of the car. Well, apart from running a strap around it, but you know what I mean. These aren't stretch bolts either, they are reusable. I just realised I need to disconnect this and I haven't. I'll do it in a minute. Oh, I do have to take that off. Thanks, British Leyland. One thing to save me some time later, I'm just going to put a mark on here with a permanent marker. That'll just help me line that up in the rough area that it needs to be, since I know it's good where it is. And this is another one where the studs are just the right length that you have to pull this out slightly to get the nuts off. There we go. I'm going to slacken off the tensioner, which again is a 13 mil, and that will allow the timing belt to move out of the way. There we go. Moment of truth. I believe everything is disconnected that needs to be. Now, since I've got a new belt, I'm pretty sure it's the right one. I'm actually going to cut this belt off. Since I've got one to go on, it's always sensible to replace it anyway when you disturb the head. I think they're about £15. They're not massively expensive. There we go. I've missed one. That heater hose there needs to be disconnected. And I think that's the last thing. Let's see what's behind door number 1. Oh, the head gasket's come up with the head. So my problem was this end, and it was this corner here, but honestly I'm not seeing anything wrong. Nothing obvious anyway. Usually, when I've had the head off before, there's been a very obvious area that's been kind of burned or damaged in some way, and there just isn't anything like that on here. I mean, it's a little wet, obviously, from the water getting through, but there's no signs of rust build-up. There's a little bit of water that's dropped down on the pistons, but again, I don't see anything problematic in there. And the only thing I could see is the shape of the gasket looks a little bit warped on this corner and this corner, but other than that I don't see anything wrong with it, so that's a bit strange. I'm no stranger to head gasket issues on this car. I've had several, and every time I've opened this up when there's been a problem, it's been very obvious. It's just been there looking at you, and you've been able to see, like, it'll have burned through here, or it'll have blown out an edge, or, you know, there'll be something. What's really strange with this is there's nothing to see. Apart from the usual, you know, surface dirt from there being a gasket on there, and a bit of water from it squeezing past, I don't see any issues. And this is the area where the issue was. No, tell a lie. This is the area where the issue was. And yeah, I mean, that is just dirt, really. And the gasket itself, I would have expected a problem in this area, and there just isn't anything. You know, it looks okay. So I'm not sure what's going on there. When you look at the block, again, this is the area that was causing the problem, and this is the piston I'd lost compression on. And again, I don't see anything obviously amiss, apart from a bit of water, which is to be expected because it was leaking out. It just seems like the head just hasn't sealed down properly. But I'm not seeing any obvious reasons for it. I'll clean all the surfaces up. I'll clean out what's in here, because we don't want that sat in there, and put it back together with a new gasket and a new belt. I can't see what else I can do. Now then, I know you're going to tell me that I should get the head skimmed and I should get it tested. Fact is, about 70 miles ago, before the head gasket did whatever it's done, I did have this head pressure tested. I had a 10th skim on it, which is quite a hefty skim, and I got it brought back and fitted to the car. And for 70 miles, no problems, no overheating. It ran really quite well. So this problem's a bit weird. It's been suggested to me, it could be that the block is slightly warped. So I haven't really got a way to test that. I've got a ruler, a metal ruler, and I can put that across it, but that's only going to tell me so much. Now, when I last put everything together, I did that, and everything was fine, as far as I could tell. The only way to get the block tested is to pull the engine. So what I'm going to do instead for now, I'm going to fit a new gasket I've got with a new belt, because that's the cheapest and the least work required to find out whether or not it's just a bad gasket. If I fit a new gasket and it fixes the problem, great. If the gasket doesn't fix the problem, then I have to pull the engine out. So that's what we're testing. I don't want to delve into this and pull it all to pieces unless I know I have to. Yeah, I mean, sometimes parts just fail. It could just be a part failure. I don't know. Right, I've had some lunch, and I've given things a clean, as much as they want to clean. I've also put a straight edge, corner to corner, and along this, and I know it's not going to deal with things as closely as getting it skimmed and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to check that there wasn't a bad enough warp in anything that it showed up with just a straight edge and a manual inspection. And there isn't. I don't see any dips, I don't see any pitting, I don't see any problems. The head is the same. You know, it's fairly clean. It's as clean as I can get it to go anyway. The only thing I did notice is there was some very light surface corrosion in the corners, but I think that's from, with the old gasket, letting some water through. Once that was scraped off, it was just the powdery stuff you get with aluminium. There was no pitting. So, again, I don't know. I have to assume, because I can't see any other problems, I have to assume it's a bad gasket. Nothing else is jumping out as being the issue. I'd had the head bolts out and retorqued them a couple of times, so I don't think the bolts were bottoming out in the holes. I don't think the bolts have stretched, because they're not stretch bolts. I don't know, it's a bit of a strange one. So, I'm going to put everything back together, and we're going to run the car, and we're going to see what happens. Because at this point, I can't really see what else to do to fix this. It'll either work or it won't. If it doesn't work, we'll pull the engine. And if it does work, great. I've got a couple of head gaskets in stock. When you run an O series, you keep head gaskets in stock. I was going to use this one. I don't remember where I got it from. I think I bought it as a new old stock item, and then I turned it over, and we're not using that one. I think that's just going to give me trouble, so that one's in the bin. The other one I've got is from ANG. Now, I've used ANG a few times over the years. I haven't had a problem with their parts before. This is somebody I trust, that's their details. Not sponsored or anything, they've just always been good. This gasket feels a better quality than the one I've taken off. It just doesn't feel as flimsy. So, I'm wondering if the one I've fitted is just a bad gasket. I mean, this one looks a better shape and everything, so fingers crossed, eh? I've fitted the gasket. I've just put these in hand tight, so I'm going to tighten those down. I've got a torque wrench, and it's a spiral pattern, so you start in the middle and go out like that. The torque setting for the head is 47 Newton meters, or 35 pound-feet for the first tighten, and then it's 81 Newton meters, or 60 pound-feet for your seconds. So this is the first pass, and then I'll go around and I'll do the second pass. That click tells me that it's the torque it should be. It's an old manual one rather than a digital. Same pattern. Just double check. Okay. And of course, we'll check all this again once the car's been running for a while, as is normal. Assembly is reverse of disassembly, so we'll just get everything put back together, really. I'm going to do the belt early on because I really dislike putting the belt on this car. It is a nuisance. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to take the alternator belt off. Yes, I am. Because otherwise you can't get this one on. There we are. We've got our marking. The dimple is in line with that hole at the top. Mark on the pulley is in line at the bottom, which is pretty important. And now we struggle with the timing belt, which is always difficult. I'm going to turn the camera off for this bit because I tend to swear. Well, that was about as horrible as it normally is. And I'm losing the light, so I probably won't get this done today. I might have to come back to finish this tomorrow. But once you've got the belt on, you just push it home. I'm glad that's on. That's one of the more important bits because this is an interference engine. I'm going to stick the spark plugs in and then we'll put this back on. I'm not putting new plugs in because, like when the head was done, these were done about the same time, so they've only got about 70 miles on them. It seems a bit pointless to put fresh ones in after so short a period. Also, if it turns out that this hasn't fixed it, I'll have wasted money on spark plugs. It is easier doing the plugs. It is easier doing the plugs when the distributor isn't there. Don't need to go very tight with those. Just get the alternator belt back on. Put that in, plug that on. We are getting there. This is where it gets a bit tricky. You have to sort of get your bolts through to hold your gasket. I tend to do one of them, just get the bolt started in the head, and then lift the manifold where it needs to be, line up the other end, and then your gasket doesn't move. But it's tricky and it's fiddly. You just have to be a bit patient. There you go, you start one there, and then we come around this side. Make sure your exhaust gasket isn't damaged and is lined up where you need it. Doesn't really matter which one you go for, as long as you've got 2 bolts in, that will hold your gasket in place. All the bolts are the same. Oh, it's getting cold. And I say that as a northerner, so you know I'm telling the truth. I don't tighten these all the way up until I've got them all in. That way, if anything does need to move around, it can. Two of my least favourite things. Working outside in the cold and engines. Can't really see what I'm doing, it's a bit dark. And a torch would be in the way if I had one. Right, they're all in finger tight, so I'll tighten them up properly. And that should see us leak free. Well, once I've got the carburetor on. And we do this top corner first, because otherwise you can't get it on. I'd love to be wearing gloves, but if I do, I will drop this. And that would be a bad time. Right, that's that one on. The other one's started. Hope you're enjoying watching me struggle. Give you some entertainment, see me do some real work. Bother. Oh, my hands are cold. I can't really feel my fingers. Right, let's get that pipe on. Which I probably should have done before I did that. Oh well. It's on. Put you on there so I don't lose you. Let's take this one. Properly. Okay, I know the only thing left to do is the distributor, but I'm cold and it's getting dark and I don't want to mess this job up. So I'm going to wait until tomorrow to do that, come back to it with a fresh mind. I can double check the things that I've already done, make sure I don't miss anything. I'm not as confident as some people doing these jobs, and I'm having to work outdoors in the winter. Not an ideal combination. I think it'll go okay. I can't see anything wrong. I'm mystified as to why the head gasket was leaking the way it was. I'm absolutely mystified by it because there's no obvious sign of anything. So I have to assume it was a bad gasket. Once we get everything all connected back up, I'll know for definite. For now, I'm going to tidy up and I'm going to get inside, have a cup of tea and warm up. And then we'll have another go tomorrow. Hopefully we've got similar weather. Fingers crossed.